Welcome to the deep dive. We take different sources, break them down, and pull out the key knowledge for you.
That's the plan.
Today, our mission is, well, it's a big one. We're tackling MPEP, Section 2163. That's the written description requirement in patent law.
Yep, from Chapter 2100 of the MPP, patentability. It's crucial stuff.
Absolutely. If you're involved in the patent process at all, you really need to understand how the USPTO views this. This is their interpretation of the law, 35 U.S.C. Section 112A, and the older Pre-AIA version 2.
Exactly. And, the first thing to get straight is how it's different from enablement. People sometimes mix these up.
Right. Enablement is more about the how-to, isn't it? Like, can someone actually make and use the invention based on your description?
Precisely. Enablement teaches the skilled person. Written description, though, is about something different. It asks, did the inventor actually possess the claimed invention when they filed the application? Were they truly in possession of it?
Okay, so possession at the time of filing. You need to prove you actually had the invention conceptually, not just that you knew how it would work eventually.
That's the core principle. This specification, the written part of the patent, it has to clearly convey that the inventor actually invented what's being claimed.
And how do you convey that? What does it need?
Sufficient detail. That's the key. Using, words, structures, chemical formulas, figures in the drawings, whatever it takes so that someone skilled in that specific field can look at it and reasonably conclude, yes, the inventor had this.
So it's about providing enough evidence within the four corners of the document.
Exactly. And interestingly, just showing you possessed it, like maybe having a working model isn't quite enough on its own for the written description requirement. There has to be a corresponding description in writing within the specification.
Ah, okay. So even if I built a prototype, I still need to describe it adequately on paper. The prototype helps prove possession, but the paper describe it.
You got it. The written word is essential for defining the invention for legal purposes.
Okay, that framework helps. Let's bring in some real-world context. The MPEP references case law. Ariad v. Eli Lilly seems important here. What did that case clarify?
Ariad really hammered home that the patent must describe the invention itself. It's not enough to just describe, say, a problem you want to solve or a desired outcome or even just a general way to approach it.
So you can't just say, I want a drug that does X.
Right. The Federal Circuit basically said the specification needs enough detail for a skilled person to recognize that the inventor actually conceived of and possessed the specific features like the structure or composition of what's being claimed. You need to describe the thing, not just the wish list.
Okay. Describe the what, not just the why or the goal.
Exactly. And then there's another Lilly case, Regents of the University of California v. Eli Lilly. This one tackled more complex stuff like genetic sequences.
Biotechnology. Always tricky. What was the lesson there?
Well, it showed the danger of using broad functional language, especially in really complex or fast-moving areas like biotech. Claiming something like a gene comprising SCQ ID N0.1 might not cut it.
Why not, if you have the sequence?
Because the court said, well, maybe you didn't adequately describe other critical parts. Like, what about the gene's functional bits, the promoters, the coding regions? What does it actually do and how? Just having the sequence might not prove you possess the understanding of the whole functional gene.
I see. So, especially for complex things, you need more than just identifying one piece. You need to describe its important characteristics, maybe its function in the context of the claim.
Precisely. The level of detail needed often scales with the complexity and predictability of the technology. A simple mechanical lever needs less description than, say, a complex antibody or a software algorithm.
Makes sense. So how does an inventor actually go about showing this possession in the application? What are the practical ways?
The MPEP points to a few things. Detailed drawings, of course, showing structures. Actual reduction to practice building and testing it is strong evidence, though you still need the written part.
Right.
And identifying the distinguishing characteristics, what makes this invention unique. Spelling that out clearly in the specification is key.
What about things like biological materials? You mentioned biotech. Sometimes you can't just describe those easily with words or drawings. Is there a mechanism for that?
Yes, exactly. That's where biological deposits come in. Under the rules, specifically 37 CFR 1.801, if you have biological material that's essential to the invention and can't be fully described, you can deposit a sample in an approved depository.
Okay, so you physically put the material somewhere accessible.
Right. The idea is it allows others, like someone skilled in the art, to access and verify the material you're talking about. It supports the written description.
But it doesn't replace it, I assume.
Absolutely not. And the MPEP is very clear on this. Even with the deposit, you still need to provide as much descriptive detail as possible in the specification itself. The deposit is a backup, a physical reference, but the written part defines the invention for examination and, critically, for potential infringement later. You can't just point to a vial.
Got it. The deposit helps show possession, but the words define the scope. Now, what about the claims themselves? Specifically the ones you file right at the beginning, the original claims. Do they have a special status?
They do, generally. There's a presumption that the original claims have adequate written description support in the specification as filed.
A presumption, meaning it's assumed to be okay unless proven otherwise.
Exactly. The thinking is, well, the inventor drafted these claims based on the disclosure they were simultaneously writing, so usually they align. But, and this is important, it's a rebuttable presumption.
Rebuttable. So an examiner can challenge it. When would that happen?
Well, imagine an original claim has a specific limitation, some feature, that just doesn't seem to be described anywhere else in the spec. Maybe it combines elements in a way that isn't discussed.
Ah, okay.
The examiner then has to look closely and ask, does the rest of the specification, read as a whole, really show the inventor possessed this specific combination or this specific feature? The Hyatt v. Dudas case touched on this. Just listing a bunch of parts doesn't automatically mean you've described every possible combination of them being claimed.
So listing flour, sugar, eggs doesn't automatically mean you described the specific cake recipe in the claim.
That's a great analogy, yes. You need to show you possess the recipe for that specific cake, not just the ingredients list.
Okay, so let's switch perspectives to the examiner. How do they approach this? What's their methodology when they're reviewing an application for written description compliance?
It's a structured process. First, they analyze each claim, looking at it as a whole. Then they dive into the entire application, the spec, the drawings, everything searching for disclosure that supports that claim.
And what are they ultimately trying to determine?
The core question is, would reading the specification reasonably convey to a person of ordinary skill in this specific technical field at the time the application was filed that the inventor was actually in possession of the full scope of what's being claimed?
Person of ordinary skill in the art. That hypothetical person again.
The very same. And crucially, the level of detail needed isn't set in stone. It can really vary.
How so?
It depends heavily on the technology itself and how developed the field is. In a really mature field, some things might be understood implicitly, needing less explicit description. But for cutting-edge inventions, maybe in unpredictable arts like biotech or software sometimes, you generally need a much more detailed, explicit description to convince that skilled person that the inventor truly possessed the invention.
So the examiner is sort of putting themselves in the shoes of that skilled person, looking at the application through their eyes based on the knowledge available back when it was filed.
That's a perfect way to put it. They're assessing if the communication from the inventor through the specification was clear and complete enough to demonstrate that conception and possession.
All right. So, wrapping up our deep dive into MPEP Section 2163, what's the single biggest takeaway for our listener?
I think the absolute key is remembering that written description is fundamentally about proving you possess the invention when you filed. It's distinct from enablement's how-to. It's about clearly communicating the invention itself in the specification, with enough detail, words, figures, structures to show you truly had conceived of it.
And getting this wrong isn't trivial. It can lead to rejection.
Oh, absolutely. An inadequate written description is a major hurdle. It's a basis for rejection during examination, and it can even be used to invalidate a patent years after it's granted. So clarity and completeness in describing what you've invented are just paramount.
This has been really illuminating, a focused look at MPEP Section 2163, the written description requirement. And remember, this is part of our larger series covering the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure. If other areas of patent examination interest you, the full MPEP is definitely the place to go.
It is. And before we sign off, we really need to give a big thank you to Mike Shepard. He's the creative director for this whole series, and honestly, this educational project wouldn't be happening without him.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Okay, and finally, the necessary disclaimer. This summary was put together using AI tools like ChatGPT and Notebook LM. It might have errors or miss some nuances. It's intended for educational and informational purposes only.
That's right. It is definitely not legal advice, and it's no substitute for proper instruction. For the official word, always consult the official MPEP itself, talk to a qualified instructor, or best yet, speak with a registered patent practitioner.